over the last 10 years and put on the tourist trail, put on the map, no doubt, because of Game of Thrones. The producers, they came out around maybe 11 or 12 years ago now. They recorded just one scene for Game of Thrones here at the Dark Hedges, and since then we have had countless thousands of Game of Thrones fans have come out to check it all out, get their photographs. But what you've got to understand is that the Dark Hedges themselves, well, they precede Game of Thrones by hundreds of years. You've got to go all the way back to the 1770s, and living in this area back then, we had this very prominent family. It was a family called the Stuarts, and the Stuarts were wealthy, they were influential, they were landlords and landowners. They had a big estate right here in the middle of County Antrim, and within that estate, a beautiful country home. They called it Grace Hill House. Now the story goes that the head of the household, well, that was a guy called James Stewart. Well, James must have heard about these trees. Maybe he read about them, or maybe someone told him about them, but either way, he got it in his head that he just simply had to have this very specific species of tree, and he went and sourced the trees. He went looking for them. When he found them, James Stewart purchased 150. They're called serpentine beech trees. He brought them all back here to County Antrim, and when he got them back, well, James planted the trees along the edge, or both edges of a very narrow roadway that led up to his front door. And the idea behind the project for James Stewart was really simple. All he wanted was for these trees to grow, and as they would grow, they would impress his visitors. Anyone calling to his door, they had no choice. They had to walk up through the trees to get there. No one else had them, so his way of showing off his wealth as much as anything else. Now, what James Stewart will not know is that over the centuries, these trees have grown. They've matured way beyond their normal or natural lifespan, and through that process, the trees have kind of leaned into each other across the roadway, or reached out to each other across the roadway. The branches have come together, and they have created what's often described as an atmospheric tree tunnel. Now, I've heard the Dark Hedges described in lots of ways, eerie, spooky, romantic. You've got to make your own mind up with all of that. What they are, more than anything, they are very photogenic, providing you can get yourself in the right position. Now, some of the trees are missing, they're ancient. Some of them are gone, some of them have just simply fallen over in storms. Others have been taken down for safety reasons, so they're not all intact at the moment. But my advice, if you've got the energy for it, my advice is to walk right to the end of the avenue of trees, and the end is marked by a little stone bridge. So as you walk down under the trees, you'll get to the stone bridge. My advice from there is to turn around at the bridge, look up into the canopy, look along the length of the trees, and that's where you'll get the pristine, the good photographs. You'll still get great photographs. Even if you just walk halfway down, you'll still get good photographs. But if you can manage to get all the way to the end, I think those are the best photographs. Now, if you're into Game of Thrones, if you are a Game of Thrones fan, with this location, what I always say to my Game of Thrones passengers, don't get overly excited about this one. Really don't, because the Dark Hedges featured in Game of Thrones for all of about 8 seconds. Yeah, 8 seconds, it's nothing. To get those 8 seconds of footage, well, the Game of Thrones producers were here for over 4.5 weeks. It took a long time. They spent a lot of money as well, and you'll understand maybe when you get here, as you walk down underneath the avenue of trees, you're going to be walking on a hard surface, just like the one I'm driving on, and they couldn't have that in Game of Thrones. It was way too advanced, so they had to hide the road, disguise it. To do that, they rolled out turf or grass the entire length of the road. They turned it into a track for a cart, or they made it look like a cart track. They took away modern fences and gates and signage, and when they were filming the scene, they blew smoke up through the branches. They give it that sort of mysterious, cold, typical Game of Thrones feel. 4.5 weeks of hard work. At the end of it, the producers had transformed the Dark Hedges into what they called the King's Road, and it was along the King's Road that young Arya Stark made her escape after her father had been executed. And that's taken you all the way back, and I mean right back to season 1, all the way through season 1. The family that featured most was the Stark family. Head of the Stark family was Ned Stark. He was Warden of the North. Now, towards the end of season 1, Ned Stark found himself in that little bit of trouble. He had been accused of treason, and unfortunately for Ned, well, he found himself answering to newly installed little King Joffrey Baratheon, and that was never going to end well for him. Now, just going off on a tangent for a moment, I remember, I don't know about you, but I remember watching the very first episode of Game of Thrones, and I'm talking season 1, episode 1. This was a brand new drama, heavily promoted across the media. Winter is coming, all of that, you know, and I remember it caught my eye. I was watching and I thought, you know what, maybe I'll have a go at this. I'll see what it's all about. And I got myself ready. I prepared myself, you know. Picture me Friday night, tin of beer in my tangerine onesie, and Game of Thrones came on, and it was shortly, very, very shortly into that first episode that Ned Stark appeared, and all I could do was sit back and smile, because I realised right away that Ned Stark's character in Game of Thrones was being played by an actor called Sean Bean. But all I could think was, I wonder how long it'll be before they kill him off. Because Sean Bean, you've got to agree with me, he's one of those actors, he gets killed off in almost everything he does. And why would Game of Thrones be any different? I didn't have to wait long. And I don't want to give too much away, I don't want to spoil anything for anyone, but towards the end of season 1, Ned Stark left Game of Thrones in 2 parts.
Yeah.
Come on, keep up.
Oh my God.
Yeah, he left the show, and with him gone, that left his entire family at risk. His youngest daughter, young Arya, to make her escape. Now, they were looking for a little girl, but to make her escape, little Arya dressed up like a boy. She disguised herself as a boy, and along with her friend Gendry, you see those 2 characters. You see them step on the back of the cart, and they disappear along the King's Road. The King's Road, the Dark Hedges. That's where the 2 come together. And if you're looking for this, you've got to go to season 2. Now, Ned Stark was executed in season 1. But for you, if you're going to look for this, you've got to go to season 2, the very first episode. It's called The North Remembers. It's called The North Remembers, and what you do is you put that on, you fast forward it right to the very end, and bringing the episode to its conclusion, you'll see young Arya and Gendry make their escape along the King's Road. And it brought, with all that, you know, all that very dramatic Game of Thrones music, all that do everything, sound effects, driving, comedy. Alright, so now the other McCombs coaches will be here. They're not far behind us anymore, so they'll be here when you come back. But I'm gonna, once I stop, I don't move, so you come back to the same position, and this is where I'll be sitting. But stay there just for 1 second. Now, don't go away just for a moment. I'm going to show you which direction to walk in.